The glittering world of modern celebrity culture has long been defined by an obsession with flawless presentation, where physical appearance serves as both a calling card and a carefully manufactured brand. For over a decade, the public has watched the dramatic evolution of public figures who redefine beauty standards, shifting the cultural landscape toward exaggerated silhouettes, sculpted features, and an almost supernatural level of aesthetic perfection. In this high-stakes environment, millions of viewers track every modification, every wardrobe change, and every public appearance, treating the human body as a canvas for creative expression and societal trendsetting. Yet beneath the heavily filtered photographs and the glamorous red carpet moments, a quiet but profound shift has been brewing within the entertainment industry. A growing number of influential personalities are beginning to question the very standards they help popularize, looking past the external glitz to examine what these radical physical transformations truly mean for their identity, self-worth, and long-term well-being. It is a narrative that goes far beyond simple fashion choices, touching upon the intense psychological pressures of fame and the universal human desire to be seen for who one truly is on the inside. As we begin to explore this fascinating transition from artificial perfection back to authentic roots, we invite you to become a permanent part of our community by subscribing to our channel, ensuring you never miss the deep, untold stories behind the headlines that shape our cultural conversation. To fully understand this modern phenomenon of self-reflection and physical reversal, one must look at the larger context of the entertainment world during the late 2000s and early 2010s. This was an era dominated by the meteoric rise of reality television and social media platforms, environments where a striking physical presence could instantly propel an individual from obscurity into the stratosphere of global notoriety. The industry created a specific mold for success, one that demanded amplified curves, flawless facial symmetry, and an image that commanded immediate attention in a crowded digital landscape. Young women entering this competitive arena often felt an immense pressure to conform to these hyper-stylized ideals, viewing cosmetic enhancement not merely as a personal choice, but as an essential business strategy and a shield against the hypercritical gaze of the public. The cultural momentum was entirely focused on addition, on adding volume, restructuring features, and pushed the boundaries of what was naturally possible to achieve a larger-than-life persona that could be easily monetized. For years, this formula proved incredibly successful, generating massive fortunes, millions of followers, and establishing a dominant aesthetic that influenced an entire generation of fans worldwide. However, the relentless pursuit of an idealized exterior often comes with a hidden cost, creating a profound disconnect between the public persona and the internal reality of the individual living behind the image. When a person becomes famous primarily for a specific look, that look can become a prison, trapping them in a caricature that overshadows their actual personality, intellect, and personal growth. The human body, subjected to multiple procedures and continuous modifications, becomes a site of public commentary and speculation, leaving little room for the natural evolution that every human being undergoes as they mature. Over time, the gap between who a person is on the inside and what they project to the world can become an unbearable weight, sparking a deep internal crisis that no amount of fame or financial success can soothe. This realization often marks the beginning of a completely different journey, a brave decision to strip away the artificial layers, defy the very industry standards that brought them wealth, and embark on a path toward radical self-acceptance and physical restoration. This brings us to the remarkable and ongoing evolution of Angela White, known to the global public for years by her commanding stage persona, Blac Chyna. Emerging from the highly competitive world of urban modeling and dancing at the age of 19, she quickly became a fixture in the entertainment industry, celebrated for her striking, ultra-enhanced look that perfectly captured the aesthetic demands of the era. Her public identity was defined by a bold, uncompromising presentation that featured dramatic curves and sculpted facial features, making her an instantly recognizable icon in music videos, reality television, and social media. For a long time, this image served her well, anchoring a multi-million-dollar empire and establishing her as a prominent trendsetter in pop culture. Yet, as the years passed and the initial thrill of global fame gave way to the deeper responsibilities of adulthood and motherhood, an internal transformation began to take root. The very features that had defined her celebrity brand started to feel like a foreign armor, sparking a profound desire to realign her physical self with her evolving internal values. setting the stage for a dramatic and highly publicized journey back to her authentic foundations. The turning point in this journey of profound self-reinvention manifested not through a sudden, quiet withdrawal from the spotlight, but through a courageous and completely transparent public unraveling of a meticulously constructed image. For an individual whose very livelihood and global brand were inextricably linked to a specific hyper-enhanced aesthetic, deciding to systematically dismantle that physical identity required an extraordinary amount of personal conviction. Angela White, having lived for more than a decade under the massive cultural shadow of her alter ego Black Chyna, chose to invite her millions of followers directly into the sterile rooms of medical clinics, documenting the literal dissolution and removal of the foreign substances that had defined her public persona. This process was not merely about changing a hairstyle or updating a wardrobe. It was a literal physical deconstruction of a multi-million-dollar commodity. By sharing the raw, unglamorous reality of reversing her extensive cosmetic procedures, she effectively broke the unspoken code of celebrity illusion, exposing the painful, complicated, and deeply personal steps required to reclaim a body that had long been surrendered to the demands of public consumption and commercial expectation. The sheer scale of this physical reversal is something that completely stunned both fans and industry observers, as it touched almost every single aspect of her famous silhouette. One of the most significant and physically demanding steps in this extensive medical journey was the process of removing the massive amounts of silicone injections from her buttocks, a procedure that she openly addressed to clear up years of intense public speculation. For a long time, the dominant narrative surrounding her famous curves was that she had undergone a traditional Brazilian butt lift, a highly popular surgical procedure where fat is harvested from one part of the body and transferred to the rear. However, she directly shattered this long-held misconception by explaining the dangerous reality of her past choices, stating clearly that she had never actually had a BBL because she simply did not possess enough natural body fat at the time to undergo that specific transfer. Instead, she had received direct silicone injections at a young age, a highly risky and unregulated method that can lead to severe long-term health complications, migration of the material, and intense physical discomfort as the body ages. The process of extracting these hardened silicone deposits from the muscle tissue is a notoriously complex and painful surgical undertaking, requiring elite medical expertise and a lengthy recovery period. Yet, she pursued this difficult path with unwavering determination, eventually confirming to her audience that doctors had successfully removed all of the dangerous silicone from her body. This monumental physical relief was accompanied by an equally dramatic reduction in her upper body proportions, where she began systematically downsizing of the breast implants she had relied on for years to maintain her signature hourglass figure. Her relationship with breast augmentation had been a long and repetitive cycle of escalation and reduction, reflecting the changing trends of the entertainment industry and her own shifting comfort levels over her career. She revealed that her very first surgical modification began with a relatively modest 300 cubic centimeters, but as the pressures of her high-profile career intensified, she rapidly escalated the volume, climbing to a massive 700 cubic centimeters, a size that commanded immediate attention but placed immense strain on her physical frame. Realizing that this extreme volume no longer served her well-being or her evolving sense of self, she began a steady, calculated process of downsizing, moving from 700 down to 500, then back to 300, and eventually plunging down to a mere 100 cubic centimeters. Today, she maintains a subtle 120 cubic centimeter implant, explaining to her followers with characteristic candor that because she is naturally completely flat-chested, the years of carrying massive implants had severely stretched out her natural skin and tissue. The small remaining implants exist simply to fill that empty space and provide structural support, preventing the skin from sagging rather than creating an artificial, attention-grabbing volume. This careful calibration of her body was matched by an equally thorough transformation of her face, where she decided to completely dissolve the extensive network of dermal fillers that had resculpted her natural bone structure over the last decade. For years, her face had been defined by the ultra-sharp, hyper-contoured lines that dominate social media feeds, achieved through regular and precise injections of synthetic fillers into her chin, her cheeks, and along her entire jawline to create an aggressively sculpted, camera-ready appearance. In an act of radical reclamation, she chose to have medical professionals inject dissolving enzymes directly into these areas, watching as the synthetic volume melted away to reveal the authentic, softer facial structure she possessed before her rise to global fame. Furthermore, she surprised many within the beauty and entertainment communities by confirming that she has completely abandoned the use of Botox, choosing instead to let her natural expressions and genuine emotions show freely on her face without the freezing effects of regular neurotoxin injections. This total cessation of facial modifications was summarized beautifully in her own words as a joyful return to the basics, signaling a complete rejection of the synthetic armor that had protected and projected the character of Black China for so many years. The profound motivation to sweeping physical liquidation stems from a deep internal realization about how external appearances dictate human interaction and create immediate, often unyielding biases in society. She reflected deeply on the fact that whatever an individual chooses to put on the outside is invariably the very first thing the world sees, forming an instant barrier of assumptions before a single word is ever spoken. For over a decade, her massive implants, her exaggerated facial features, and her highly synthesized look had automatically placed her into a specific hypersexualized cultural category that completely overshadowed her true intellect, her maternal warmth, and her internal evolution. She grew tired of the immediate, superficial judgments that people made the moment she walked into a room, realizing that her physical appearance was actively preventing people from seeing the well-rounded, mature woman she had actually become on the inside. The decision to strip away these physical markers was an act of profound liberation, a deliberate choice to force the world to look past the superficial canvas and finally engage with the actual human being, the mother, and the entrepreneur who had spent years growing in the shadows of her own manufactured celebrity. The dramatic physical reversal of Angela White was merely the external symptom of a much deeper, far more profound, spiritual and existential awakening that had been quietly taking shape within her soul over the course of several years. To view her journey solely through the lens of medical procedures and altered silhouettes would be to completely miss the true significance of her transformation, which represents a holistic reclamation of her life, her purpose, and her sacred destiny. The definitive catalyst for this remarkable turning point occurred in the year 22, when she made the deeply personal and conscious decision to be baptized, an act that symbolized the washing away of the hyper-manufactured Black China persona and a literal rebirth as her authentic self. This spiritual commitment served as the foundational anchor for a series of radical lifestyle modifications, including a complete dedication to clean, healthy living and an unyielding commitment to absolute sobriety. Celebrating more than 3 years of a completely sober lifestyle in February, she proved to a highly skeptical public and an industry built on excess that her devotion to change was not a temporary publicity stunt, but a permanent, daily choice to honor her mind, her body, and her spirit. This profound inner peace allowed her to look at her life with absolute clarity, giving her the immense courage needed to systematically dismantle the lucrative platforms and toxic environments that had once fed her ego but starved her soul. The truest test of any spiritual awakening lies in the willingness to sacrifice worldly wealth and immediate gratification in pursuit of a higher moral calling. A test that she passed in a manner that completely stunned the entertainment industry. For years, she had reigned as one of the most financially successful creators on the digital platform OnlyFans, where she was reportedly generating an astronomical sum of over $200 million annually. An amount of money that few people in human history could ever dream of walking away from. Yet, as her internal values shifted closer toward her faith and her true identity, she began to recognize the heavy spiritual and psychological tax that accompanied this staggering financial windfall. She came to understand that fast money often disappears just as quickly as it arrives, and more importantly, that it frequently carries a dark cloud of intense negativity, public objectification, and cultural degradation that actively erodes personal dignity. Walking away from hundreds of millions of dollars was a definitive statement to the world that her self-respect, her spiritual purity, and her mental peace were completely non-negotiable, shattering the modern myth that wealth should be pursued at any cost and setting a powerful precedent for self-worth in the digital age. At the very heart of this monumental decision-making process was her profound, unconditional love for her 2 children, who serve as the ultimate guiding lights of her own journey and the primary motivation behind her desire to project an honorable image to the world. As a mother, she became hyper-aware of the inevitable passage of time and the reality that her children were rapidly growing older, developing their own acute perceptions of the world and looking closely at the examples set by their parents. She shares her 13-year-old son, King Cairo, with the prominent recording artist Tyga, and her 9-year-old daughter, Dream, with the well-known television personality Rob Kardashian, placing both children directly in the intense, often unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. Realizing that her children would eventually see everything documented on the internet, she refused to allow her legacy to be defined by short-term internet sensationalism or hypersexualized branding, choosing instead to actively model the vows of resilience, accountability, and continuous self-improvement. By transforming her life so publicly, she is teaching her children an invaluable life lesson that it is never too late to correct your course, to stand up for your core principles, and to completely redefine who you are in spite of what society expects from you. Today, the world is witnessing the emergence of an entirely new chapter in the life of Angela White, one defined by intellectual curiosity, structured leadership, and a diverse portfolio of legitimate professional pursuits. Moving far beyond the limitations of her past celebrity identity, she has channeled her formidable work ethic and natural drive into becoming a highly respected entrepreneur, an engaging host, a talented actor, and a passionate music artist. Seeking to ground her natural business acumen in formal education and higher principles, she took the inspiring step of enrolling at Regent University, where she is currently deeply immersed in studying Christian leadership and management. This academic pursuit reflects her desire to not only lead her own life with integrity, but to eventually acquire the skills necessary to inspire, manage, and positively impact communities and businesses through faith-based leadership principles. Her journey from the chaotic, high-pressure world of urban dancing and reality television to the quiet, disciplined halls of higher Christian education is a testament to the limitless capacity of the human spirit to evolve, grow, and transcend its original circumstances. Ultimately, the story of this profound transformation serves as a powerful, universal beacon of hope for anyone who has ever felt trapped by their own past choices, their public reputation, or the artificial expectations of a hyper-superficial society. It reminds us all that true beauty is not something that can be bought in a syringe, sculpted by a surgeon, or measured by the exaggerated dimensions of a physical frame, but is instead something that radiates from a pure heart, a clear mind, and an authentic alignment with one's true internal values. By stripping away the synthetic layers of silicone, fillers, and performative glamour, she has revealed a far more beautiful, resilient, and commanding presence than the character of Black China ever could have achieved. As she continues to walk this brave path of sobriety, motherhood, education, spiritual devotion, she carries with her the respect of an audience that has watched her transform from a pop culture caricature into a well-rounded, dignified woman of faith and purpose. The future before her is bright, unburdened by the weight of the past, and filled with the endless possibilities that can only come when a person finally chooses to live their truth completely out in the open.